I think it's recording. So Shiva and Kai, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you all for joining today. Thank you, Prannoy and Nishant, for organizing these events. Today, we are going to have this panel discussion on student recruitment and management, I think, which is super important, relevant to everybody. Um, yeah, I'm very honored to moderate this session together with Savia. And thank you all the panelists as well, to uh, share your experience and wisdom. So thank you for your generosity. We really appreciate it. Now, let's start with the first questions. We will try to maybe try to finish each question about 3 minutes. So as Prannoy said, there are 8 questions, so we can finish in 30 minutes approximately. So we will have plenty of time for questions. For the first question is for the panelists, maybe Stephanie and Marine, how do you identify graduate students who are a good fit to your lab, right? What qualities do you prioritize? I would imagine there will be, hundreds of students contacting you. How do you identify the students that, um, for that would be a good fit for your lab?
I guess I can go first. So I think that for me and my group, my work is a little bit outside of traditional civil engineering. So I would say the thing that I find to be most important is enthusiasm about working with me or working on the specific project. I feel in the past, I've only ever had one student who didn't like continue on, and that student just was not enthusiastic. So maybe this is more of a what I don't want. But I feel like if a student is enthusiastic about the project or enthusiastic about working with me, then that student I can pretty much um, mentor the rest of the facets through that enthusiasm. So that's one thing that's really important. And then what I actually look for in terms of like ability is self-motivation. So I want someone who's independent. I want someone who doesn't require micromanaging, which is something that I tell all students as I'm interviewing them. If it ends up that they do need micromanagement, that's like something you work through, right? But somebody who wants to be independent and understands the concept of independent research. Lori already has her hand raised.
I do, and I don't know if this maybe is part of a future question, so feel free to pass me off if so, but I'm just curious how you assess those qualities out of the gate. I think that's one of the big things I struggle with. Totally agree, enthusiasm and like stick-to-itness, but how do you assess that with incoming interest?
And also to follow up on Lori's question, like how do you know you don't need to micromanage them? Because you tell them, but how do you know that, right? Yeah.
Do y'all want me to answer? I can do my best. Mirian, you can also chime in. One thing that I do if I'm interviewing students that are not already at Texas A&M, which is where I am, is I can give them like a small project. And actually, those students who are at Texas A&M, it's a lot easier to do, right? But for me, I work in machine learning, mostly machine learning applications in natural hazards engineering, concrete structures. And so I can give them a data set that we've already done a lot on. And I mean, to be completely transparent, I haven't done this in the last phase of hiring students. So AI and like large language models may make this not as good of a task. But I can give them a data set and say, create this kind of like very basic model and come back to me and present on that. And you can see kind of how they navigated that and ask questions throughout that. So I think giving students a task. Most of the students I recruit also are already at Texas A&M, which I understand that is something that I'm very lucky to have students who are very motivated to like come already without having an advisor, and thus I get to see their how they perform in maybe a master's level class or even an undergraduate level class, and then they end up staying on. So I think that that's obviously something that you can really leverage if you're at a university that has a good undergraduate or master's program. But Miriam, what would you say?
Yeah, well, for me, I would say the main qualities are, of course, related to, of course, being enthusiastic, of course, but also be positive. someone that will not give up the first time that something doesn't work, and also perseverant, that will do something and then will keep going. That how I kind of figure out this one. Well, first thing I do is I go and check the applications. Right at the beginning, you cannot just meet everyone. So when I check the applications, I check two things. First, they have an essay and they check what professors they want to work with. First, I check that I am the first one. Why? Because if they want someone else, it will be really a waste of time. Second thing, I check if the other professors make sense, right? If they put me first, but then they put someone in hydraulics and someone in somewhere else, looks like they are trying to find something, but it's not really maybe driven by what they want to do. So that really helped me to filter out a lot. Then another thing that I do is usually if they don't contact me personally, I just don't go and try to pursue them. So I check if they send me emails before they apply, even if I didn't reply to all of them, and also if they contact either me or my students through other ways, right? Like, for example, LinkedIn or something like that. Why? Because if they do it, it looks like they have really the courage to kind of figure out things that are not that easy, right? While other ones, they just apply and they wait for someone to give an offer. So that can help maybe to tell a little bit about this person really is driven, or if this person is just applying for 100 places and see if something comes out. That's one of the things I do. Then in terms of qualities, for example, be positive. I know it looks like kind of how you know that, right? But then when you talk to people, you kind of, I mean, for me at least, it's easy to see that quality, because I don't ask a lot of technical questions. I ask more about what you expect about your PhD, how do you think will be your daily day and things like that. And then depending on the responses, I kind of figure it out a little bit. And then I also ask my other PhD students what they think, because that's important, right? You don't want to put someone there that then they will not be willing to work with. So I think that really helped me a lot. And then I do not like to hire people that has prior experience, except this prior experience with me. And the reason is because it's more difficult to unlearn things that are not correct than just learn new things. So I really prefer to teach them all, so then it will be just, I know that they know what is right and what is wrong and what things they cannot do in the lab. And if this person worked before in other labs, then it will be more difficult to kind of put it in the way that it will be correct. So I never hire someone with prior experience in concrete, unless they are my previous undergraduate students that I have a lot that then they did master and PhD. Those ones are fine. That's all. I don't want to take that much of the time.
I can say one other tiny thing. I know we're short for time, but just of how you assess. If you interview a student, one thing you can do, which I think Mirian kind of touched on, is you can say, hey, here are the emails of the rest of my students. I would love for you to talk to them about whether or not like you think it's a good fit, like get to know them, make sure they are telling you the truth about what it's like to work with me and work with each other. And they can also give you resources, and like we have a shared drive and all these different things. And I think then you can see if that student actually goes and does that. That's one step. How long does it take them to do that? Did they end up asking good questions? And that's one way to kind of figure out, like, are you going to have to, one, micromanage the student, and two, for me, like, how enthusiastic are they about working with you? What are the questions they ask those students? How quickly did they do it, et cetera?
Yeah, well, and one joke that my students do about me hiring is that it looks like I never hire a student that has a profile picture that is not smiling. And I think this is just also, it's a little bit of a bias, but the truth is, if you choose your profile picture, and if you choose a picture that you look like very like then it's like you're kind of young and you're like, so that's something that my students joke. It's not a requirement really, but it looks like they joke that it is, because they all look very happy in those pictures.
Thank you, Maria, Stephanie, for
Guys,
sharing.
sorry to interrupt, but I think this raised a lot of interesting points. So let me just add a couple things from my side. Sorry, I know we are way off time. But one, yeah, I also encourage applicants, or at least definitely the students who have accepted my offers, to go chat with my PhD students, former PhD or current. And to me, it's a huge red flag if a professor does not let you do that. It suggests that there's not the best culture or a culture of fear in the group, right? The second thing about micromanaging, I think I actually do micromanage a little bit. It's probably not the best of things, but I think some PIs have a bit of an issue with micromanagement. I do. It's okay. The students haven't complained too much, but I do. So if I get completely independent students, fantastic. But sometimes I have the need to micromanage. And I thought Miriam's comments were very interesting. I actually really look for work experience and experience in concrete materials, and that's something that I give a significant amount of plus to. But that can also be in the industry. It doesn't have to be research experience. Anyone who has experience working in the industry or experience as a teacher or lecturer automatically gets a +1 or whatever from my side. So.
Thank you, Prannoy, for adding. There's a lot of good suggestions. Yeah, I just want add one point to with one point that Stephanie raised. So I personally use. I saw Nishant also share in the chat. So in the second round of the interview, I give student a paper, a classic paper in the fields, ask them to do a presentation and critically evaluate. I feel like that's kind of helpful, yeah, from my experiences. All right, so let's move on to the second question. So, what do you like? How do you manage your group? You know, what tools and structures you found is very efficient in terms of managing your group, especially if in your group, you know, the size is increasing. You know, weekly meeting, individual meetings, you know, project tracking, those kind of things. Yeah, maybe Nishan and Prannoy.
Sure, I can take that first. Yeah, I think for me, you know, my group sort of grew from the kind of as I started, you know, year over year. So I had to kind of evolve. How do I manage them? But I think at the current group, what I do is I have a weekly meeting with everybody. I would meet everybody for, let's say, 15 minutes, like one on one. And then I would have a monthly meeting where the entire group would be present, and everybody would present maybe, let's say, for 2 minutes, just give a very short update on what they did in the last month and what is their plan for the next month. And I found these kind of monthly meetings to be very helpful because then everybody's presenting, everybody's there, and a lot of good ideas have come out of those monthly meetings because we are doing kind of brainstorming. Everybody's doing brainstorm. There's like 20 people sitting together, and somebody says, "Oh, you presented that, I presented that. Why don't we mix this together and do that?" And sometimes another student gives an idea to another student, and something new. So some of the really good breakthrough ideas in our lab actually have come out of those group meetings. So I would really recommend having those one-on-one as well as monthly like group meetings. Again, that's what has worked for me, but it is really up to how everybody runs their group. I think in terms of management, the other thing I found useful is to have like a cloud folder. So we have a folder on Box where everything is shared. Everybody can look at anybody's presentation at any time, and I think this helps students to learn from each other. And also, we don't have to worry about emailing each other attachments and so on. We also use Slack quite heavily. I bit the bullet and I start using Slack in my second or third year. Initially, I was very resistant, but once I switched to Slack, it's way better than email. And so I think having that instant communication is very helpful, not only for the student advisor, but also the students among each other. And now within Slack, we have several subgroups, like mini groups within the big group, which work on focused things. Yeah, so I think that's what I would say to summarize. Yeah, weekly meetings, monthly meetings, Box, Slack. I think those are tools to live by.
Thank you, Nishan.
I do weekly group meetings. These are 1.5 hour meetings, and we have minutes taken at all of those meetings, which are sent out after the meetings. My group is not anywhere near as big as Nishan, so it's a little easier to manage. In all of these meetings, we have time for everyone to speak, but we also discuss lab equipment, purchases, any issues that have come up in the lab, travel, conferences, and just everybody, provides updates. We have short discussions there. I also walk into the office once in a while to see what the students are doing. What I'm not doing, and something I find very regretful, is that I'm not really spending any time in the lab. So, I kind of don't really know what the students are doing. It would be, I would really like to spend more time in the lab, but it hasn't happened. So if they're making some critical errors, I wouldn't find out, and that bugs me a bit. Uh, in terms of doing other things as well, we grab group lunch at least once a semester. We hang out a little bit at conferences as well, and I do my best to send students to 2 to 3 conferences a year. Sometimes it's not my funding, they had their own funding, but I find that them getting to know others, others getting to know them is really, really very beneficial. We At some point I wanted to try to do weekly coffee meetings or something. It happened for a short while, but it did not take off. I really wanted to do Slack as well. I love Slack, but my students did not care for it all that much. We do WhatsApp now mainly. uh, SharePoint is what we generally use for sharing documents, but I need to be better about it. I haven't pushed. We have lab notebooks. Everybody uses their lab notebooks. When they leave, I get all of the lab notebooks, but we probably should do some sort of a digitization to make sure the data is not lost as well.
Thank you very much for sharing. So the other question is that how do you, what kind of expectations you have for graduate students, especially as they evolve, right? For first, second, and more to the advanced stage of during the PhD study. Maybe Stephanie and Prannoy for these questions. What are the proper,
You want to
expectations?
go first, Noah, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So expectations are obviously for me, so not obvious, individual to the student. The first question I ask students when they're under my supervision is, what do you want out of this PhD? Why are you doing a PhD? If it's academic or research related, then that takes us down one path. If it's industry related, that takes us down another path. All that being said, I still expect my students to do like a minimum of the same things. So a minimum of 3 to 4 papers, a minimum of, if there's an opportunity to be a TA, to help like review papers and maybe contribute to, especially if they're going into academia, I try to give them the opportunity to contribute to proposals by like reading my proposals and, like saying, here, I could support these preliminary results or something like that. But if they're academic related, then I'm going to give them the papers that come in that are more scientific, less application focused. I'm going to encourage them to write many more papers. I'm going to encourage them to go to different conferences. And then if they're, maybe I have a student recently who thought he was going to be a professor at an R1 institution and started as he, was writing papers and reviewing papers and going to conferences. He was not enjoying what he thought he would enjoy. And then he was a TA and he started getting teaching awards in our department, right? Like he's absolutely wonderful at it. So now he's focused on more teaching related institutions, and my expectations for him are slightly different, right? He doesn't need to write 8 to 10 papers. The 3 to 4 that is the minimum is more acceptable, perhaps. So a same thing changes if they are focused on going to industry, then I maybe send them to more practical conferences. I might send them to an ACI where there are more people from industry rather than just an EMI, which is where I send most of my students. Or maybe they're not going to be the student who like travels to Europe for a conference. Yeah. So depending on whether they're industry or academic research focused, slightly different, but there's definitely minimums.
Before I answer, Ramya has her hand raised.
I had a question. How do you get your students to write 8 to 10 papers?
I mean, I think if so that's what I think is really helpful. And when you ask that question in the very beginning of like, what is your goal? And if their goal is truly to end up at an R1 institution and to like be doing research for the rest of their life, then that's also their motivation once you explain it to them. Like, it's a very competitive job, right? Like if they know from the beginning that's what they want, and you can explain to them, okay, there's only this many positions per year in your area. Your area is this tiny little area. You're going to be an expert on this. I don't, the students I have that, I have one that's a faculty, one that's, two that are postdocs. Well, I guess, many that are postdocs, right? And then only one that went to industry. And then like some that went to PhDs, right? So those PhD students though, who are still on the postdoc to academia route in some level of it, only one of them didn't like successfully write a large number of papers because I think they were all independently, like I said, self-motivated once they understood what it really took to become an academic. So I think it's really putting it in the context of like, this is what academia is. If that's what you're saying you want to do, then let me help you get there. That's my job as a mentor, is to help you on that track. But what that's going to take is not the minimum 4 papers that most people say a PhD thesis makes, right? Yeah. I mean, and it's the ideas, right? It's breaking it down into, you have to be able to decompose it into, okay, these are your 5 ideas, and this actually can be a paper. And for each of my students, maybe I'll add this one thing, Prannoy, and I'll let you talk. But at the beginning of their PhD, I also had them write an outline of like, this is the framework of what I think I'm going to do. And for those who want to be in academia, I say now connect them to paper topics, right? And those paper topics may shift, but if you want to be in academia, it needs to be more than this many papers. And so if you only end up with 4 papers, then let's start thinking about how we can expand you into maybe a tangential discipline or like a tangential idea, or work with another student in my group. Like, I don't remember if it was Prannoy or Nishant saying, but we also have these group meetings. And so there are lots of ideas that come out of the collaboration in those group meetings where it may not be their specific thesis, but it goes tangential.
Laura.
So Stephanie, did you mention that you do a lot of machine learning? Like, is it not experimental work? You don't do experimental work?
I mean, I just got an experimental project for the first time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we'll see how that one, is that going to
Yeah.
be?
No, I was just curious because I do think there's a distinct difference between if you're doing experimental work versus computational. And computational, you can definitely get more papers.
Yeah, which is why I wasn't saying that like
Anyways,
that's
yeah,
the number of
just,
papers that anyone needs to
yeah,
expect. I think that the number of papers that you expect out of your group is what is necessary for like you and your discipline, and what your tenure probably will depend
right.
on. And also I understand.
Yeah, I just wanted to, yeah, I was just curious if
But I
it
would,
would do any
this is a
experimental
slight
work.
disclaimer, and maybe
Mhm.
not have to do with mentoring or recruitment, but I will say that if you are a pure experimentalist and you are struggling in the beginning to get the papers out at the beginning of your tenure, no, I'm not saying you are, but some
Yeah,
people maybe. I've reviewed people's tenure packages where, they're going up for mid-tenure and they still have 0 papers because they've been building up experimental tests, right? So I would encourage you to see if there are other opportunities to work with somebody who's on the computational side of things, so
yeah,
that you can kind of get your students writing papers that way, because the sooner they write a paper, the sooner they realize how much work it is. So
yeah,
the less chance it is of them leaving after doing their experimental work and not getting that paper published, and then putting it all on the PI.
yeah. I hired a postdoc who was a modeler while my
There you
lab was being set
Yeah.
up. That was some of the best advice I received. Just gonna throw that out.
Smart.
Right. Thank you, Pranny.
So I really, what I want from my students is for them to be good people, to do good science, to be ready for society. I know that sounds super cliched, but I have zero problem graduating a student with 0 publications if they put in an honest effort. As a department or as a university, we don't have any minimum number of publications. And I would rather have somebody with 0 publications than somebody who tries to, pull a fast one or to publish crap, basically. So with that being said, obviously papers are, the going currency. It's important for everyone. I I aim for 3 papers from students, but if it goes less or more, it's not something that bothers me. As Stephanie said, the expectations, depending on whether they're going for industry or academia, are a little different. And the ones who are going into academia, I obviously uh, have them focus a little bit more on publications, on proposals, and on teaching. But really, I mean, I have no problem graduating someone without any papers as long as it's not their fault, right? Sometimes a student may not have papers because they're working on an industry project and some of that stuff can't be published, or they really put in a hard effort and things did not work out. And these things happen. I'm not too concerned about them, but typical expectations would be three.
Thank you. A follow-up question is that if you have some students who are come across some challenges during the research or lab, how do you help them get through and keep them motivated throughout the process? Now, especially maybe students without a lot of experiences with research, how to keep them motivated.
It's Stephanie. If you want to go first, someone is knocking my door, so I need to just go. Yes, I will be there in.
Yeah, sorry for this one. Maybe Nishant and Marie. Nishant, you want to go?
Sure, I can go first. Yeah, I think this is a very important part, right? Because the motivation really drives everything. If you have a motivated student and they can stay motivated, let's say, for 5 years throughout their PhD, you really have to do very little. So I think what is very important is, again, having this kind of at least from my point of view, regular communication. If I meet them on a weekly basis, then in that weekly meeting I can get a little bit of a sense of what their motivation level is, because they are presenting, they are talking to me in that meeting. And I think when that time comes, that either they are they seem to be very kind of low phase of their research, and they are stuck somewhere. I think it's what I found to be very useful is just having a honest conversation with them and just asking them, is there something going on? Is there any way I can help? Because sometimes it's actually not research. Sometimes it's a personal life matter, right? That something is happening in their personal life which is severely affecting their professional work. And having that kind of honest one-on-one closed door conversation outside of the normal meeting, sometimes they would open up and they would share, oh, I've had this issue going on with my girlfriend, or I have this issue going on in my family, and this is what is making. And then I'm like, oh, that is your first priority, right? Family, health, you take care of that. Once you have that sorted, you can come back into the flow, right? And I think that gives them that assurance that they can take care of the personal stuff before they can come back to the. So I think just having that little bit of a nuanced conversation with them, I found to be very useful. But other than that, I find, at least in my experience, the past 6 years or so, most of the students are very motivated. They're very, always driven. And I think this goes back to the recruitment part as well, right? I think if you do recruitment right, then you have to do very little management. If you mess up the recruitment, then you do a lot of management. So my personal focus is to focus a lot on recruitment. And then I do very little management, only on an as needed or ad hoc basis. And personally, I don't enjoy management too much. So I like to have students which are independent, which need no management. I mean, it's their PhD, it's their master's thesis. So they should be driving it. And I can help, I can open doors, but they have to fight the people behind the doors on their own. I can give them the sword and the tools, but they do the fighting.
For me, it's more like, of course, they have to come already motivated, but then I saw sometimes that after a few years, they start to go down for many reasons, right? It could be personal life, it could be because the research is just not going as they expect, or they got a rejection or whatever other thing, right? But in general, what I do is I go for coffee regularly with them. I mean, not with all at the same time, because of course, if not, they will not be able to maybe talk about what they want to talk. But usually I just go with one every day, or sometimes with a couple of them together. And usually I don't ask what is going on, because I know this is kind of a question that then they will need to figure out, but especially when I see that they are not performing as usual, I try to say like, oh, I had a bad day. I just kind of share something about me. So I start to say, like last week I had this thing, and I really need a break, but I cannot do it now, but I will try to do it the weekend. And I start to share my own stuff. So then they go and say, you know what, it also happens to me, because maybe the girlfriend broke up, or maybe they are worried about the visa, or something is going on in their country. So I think just sharing that information, instead of asking what is going on with you, why you are not coming to the office, or why even though you are here, it looks like you are not here, right? So instead of asking those questions, that would be kind of putting them in a very tough spot. And it's just, I just talk about my own stuff and then they just do the same. It's kind of building the relation that then when they have a problem, they really come to me, because even when I have a problem, I also come to them, right? Like, for example, if suddenly a deadline just moved because whatever reason, or maybe my father is sick. So they know. So because they know about my life, they also share their own, right? I mean, if I'm kind of just this professor on the top somewhere, of course they will not talk about what is going on in their lives. And sometimes it's needed to be able to help them and to advise them in a better way. So for me, I mean, I know maybe it's not the right way, but for me, my students are my family somehow. And I really try to help them as much as I can, and they also help me. That's the point. It's not just a one-way thing. It's just two-way direction.
Thank you very much for sharing. It's a lot of, I think, very useful strategies. Yeah, I think some of them that I'm not using right now, but I think I definitely will start to adopt for my group. I personally, for my group, for every student, individual meeting, I spend at least an hour or two per week. Yeah, just talk about research or other things. Um, yeah. Yeah. Thank you all very much for sharing. And yeah, sorry we are a bit delayed in terms of this session. So we'll move on to the next section with Sylvia. I think he also have a few questions.
Okay. Thanks, Kai. So Prannoy and Mirian, I have a question for you. Seeing that you have a very good approach to actually student retention, etc., which I believe is very important. So my question to you in this very challenging time is basically, how do you get your domestic or undergraduate students who do research with you to actually join your lab group as grad students? Because most of them that actually come in, they just want to get a master's at best and then just go join the industry because it's easier for them. So our focus is primarily on international students, and especially at a place like Miami, that's pretty much has been the norm for the past, I don't know, 8 years since I've been here. So how do you guys handle this? So I guess Prannoy, Mirian, either order. Prannoy first, I guess.
Actually, I won't answer that question, Shiva. Why don't you answer it, because you're much better at it than me?
Oh, well. So I guess for me, it's just the passion of the students, right? So basically, they need to see the passion in you when you pair them with a PhD student. So Prannoy, you were my PhD advisor. And when I've seen someone down in the lab or some undergrad working pretty seriously about something, or they're serious about grad school, etc., I talk to them a lot. I spend more time talking to undergrads than actually doing research. That was the thing that we did. And yeah, once you start working with them, once you pair them up with a PhD student, the kind of passion that the PhD student gives out, or like how hands-on the PhD student is with the undergrad, kind of determines the lab culture for an outsider, like an undergrad or a domestic student. And yeah, the more you talk to them, I guess, about the topic and how important the topic is, the more they get attracted towards the field, and the more they get attracted towards the lab culture, as long as they see the PI and the PhD student that they work with them is basically like, that's what they look for, actually. Like, they look for a good culture which is not toxic, because their knowledge of PhD and grad school comes from memes where they see that it's a 5-year, 6-year commitment, etc.
I'll add only one other thing. We don't have that many domestic applicants, but when we do get good domestic applicants, we get them here and then we absolutely blow them away. Because yeah, sometimes you visit and the PI is not there, or they're very cold, or you just have drinks with the students, but you don't meet the PI. I get them here, I have them meet with me, with several other PIs. We take them out for drinks, we show them the other labs as well. And it's like, oh, wow, all of this is happening, very collaborative, very cool. So that convinces them to come here.
Yeah, and that's also, I guess, one of the advantages of being in Miami, you can give them the Miami experience, if you will.
Yeah, well, in my case, I don't have the Miami experience, so it's a little bit tougher. But what I will say is if they are already doing undergrad research with me or master, if they are working in a project that they like, usually they want to continue. I don't try to push them, but what I do is just show them what will be next. And then suddenly they realize they don't want to give up the project. They want to keep and figure out themselves, right? I say like, no worries. If you just go to industry, this other person will continue your research and do this and that. And then suddenly they feel like, oh no, I want to be the one to discover it. I want to be the one to go into this pattern or whatever thing. So they just really want to see the end, right? They don't know that there's no end. There's always something else, but that's why they end up going to academia after the PhD too. But I'm just letting them see what is the beauty of what we do, right? Like the good part of not knowing what you will do tomorrow, right? If you go to industry, it's just mainly just doing almost every day the same thing, especially if you don't get a PhD. Then if you get a PhD, it's different because you can do much more. But if not, usually it's kind of more like a box work. And I myself, I work in the industry before, so I know what is that. And at the beginning, it's exciting, and then it's kind of, okay, I will do this one for 30 years more, no way. So I'm trying to say that, but and so far so good. Since you said, Prannoy, that we should share some good news, I will partially share a good news. I am graduating my fourth student this next Monday, and she will be also my fourth student that will go to academia. She got two tenure track offers in two R1 institutions. So she already chose. I will not say anything else. She will announce it, or we will see how we'll do it, but I'm very happy for her. So yeah, 4 out of 4. So I guess they like what they see, and then they want to do the same. So very proud of them.
I guess like that's seriously awesome, because I guess you and Prannoy are in like two different parts of the country where you're at a state university where you get a lot of students, and statistically you can convert quite a bit of domestic students to get their master's/PhD. And also looking at your industry perspective, funnily enough, I was also in the industry for like a couple of years. And then like I was able to kind of share that experience when I was a grad student, as like they would be like, hey, how was industry? I'm like, it is boring, it is painful. You get asked to do things that you hate doing. And PhD kind of gives you the control over your own schedule, your own whatever you want to do, lets you be creative. Not strictly true. I mean, you can fudge facts a little bit, I guess. And a few of them actually turned from doing, I don't know, like working in the industry to actually getting a PhD. And also the situations help, like depending on how bad the market is, that also helps a lot once in a while. Anyway, moving on. So now, once they join your group, right? How do you ensure that the students that join your group, domestic or international, are doing a good job in the lab? So I guess I'll pose this question to Stephanie and Nishant.
I feel like we've touched on this a little bit in the question about like what happens when they're going through a challenging time. So I think the most important thing to me in general is once the students are here, for them to enjoy their time in my group. So I really work hard to create or like cultivate an environment of this like my research group, that these people are working together, that they have one another to rely on, they have one another to like get ideas from and whatnot. And so I think that environment, somehow it works. I mean, I do meetings once every 2 weeks with all of them together, and that's kind of like the same format as everyone said here. I throw like basically a rager when one of my students graduates, which is quite fun. You know, it's like their family comes in, their friends come in, my husband comes in. This year, my kids might come, but recently we've tried to avoid that because they're young. And just like, you know, we're there to like celebrate each other's wins. And it's not just the graduation, it's like anything else good that's happened that year. And we do little things throughout the year as well. But we usually have like 1 to 2 big PhD graduations a year. So that's fun. And I feel like all of that somehow does ensure that they're doing a good job, because especially in the group meetings or like the group environment, when one student is doing a wonderful, like absolutely needs no management, just is excelling, and everyone else sees that, that's not the intention to make everyone else feel bad, but it more lifts everyone up, right? So they kind of all try to come to the top rather than people being like, I can hide in the weeds. So I feel like because they all really do, like, I don't know, love maybe is a strong word, but really like each other and really enjoy being around each other. When one person does really well, they're motivated to come up to that level. Um, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's nice actually. Nishant, do you have anything to add to this?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a really great approach. I follow that too. I think just to add to that, I think again, this kind of iterative feedback and iterative improvement, happens over time. So let's say they do an experiment, they show a result in their weekly meeting or monthly meeting, and then I would give them feedback, and maybe the other students would give them feedback, and then they go back, improve on that result, whether it's the presentation of the result or how you actually do that particular experiment. And I think over a long time, this iterative feedback leads to that final product, which I would say, okay, now we are at a stage we can submit this paper. And usually that submitting that first paper is very, very like a big barrier, because they have to then learn that's the quality that I'm going to be happy with. But once they do that, once they're past that barrier, then the, let's say, the subsequent second paper or third paper is straightforward, because now they know, well, they have done enough replicates, they have shown the data correctly. So I think doing this iterative feedback is how I would make sure that the end result is where I would like it to be.
Nice. So speaking of iterative processes, speaking of trying to give feedback, what happens or how do you deal with students who consistently perform poorly? I know we are running short on time, so briefly, let's say. I know it's a very hard question to answer because we do invest in them a lot. So briefly,
Yeah,
how would you?
for me it will be short. I mean, what I do is what I said before. I invite them for coffee. I invite them for coffee all the time, not only if they perform poor. It's not like something, just a correlation on that. But I invite them for coffee and I talk to them, and then if they explain what is going on, I try to encourage them and then give them examples of good students, like yeah, like long time ago, Carlos now is the professor himself, but like I said, like, look, when Carlos was here, also we had this issue, and look, he did this and that, and look how he is now, and everyone then said, yes, I want to be like Carlos. So then that really helps. So the same thing with Vito and so forth, but that really helps to give them examples of when we face challenges and how we overcome them. We passed COVID together, so we know what challenges are, and we were able to survive out of that. So usually when the new crisis arise that we have right now, I'm kind of going back and see what happened in the past and how we deal with that, and say we will also deal with this, no worries.
Nishant,
Yeah,
do you
sure.
want to add something?
Yeah, I think this is also kind of a difficult part of the process. But I think again, for me, the way I've handled it is that each student, treat them as a kind of an individual. So while there is, let's say, a global standard we want to meet in terms of quality, but we also have to see each student starts at a different place. So then I see, okay, for that particular student, what's the progress they have made over 1 year or 2 years or whatever time frame that is. And as long as there's an improvement, no matter how small, right, then I can say that, okay, there is a positive trajectory here. And then the question is, how can you accelerate that? I think that's really then trying to figure out, what's the barrier. Maybe there's a particular skill, they need to take a particular course, or they need to go and sit down and chat with somebody. So I think it's really then individual focused, because then you can't have every student reach the exact same level, because everybody has their own path and journey and starting place. So what I look at is, okay, you were here last year, and are you here, so that improvement is happening, then that's good. But if you're stuck, if nothing is improving, okay, then we need to figure out what's going on. But luckily I did not have that issue so far. I mean, everybody improves, you just have to be patient. Patience is the key. I mean, especially for PhD,
Yeah.
5-year journey, you can see a lot of things happen in that 5 years. Masters, yeah, 2 years. This is a kind of a short, I would say, an appetizer, but the PhD is the main course.
Yeah, so I guess at the end of the day, it all boils down to trying to foster somewhat of an inclusive environment, a positive lab environment, reinforcing the wins, making sure everybody feels a sense of belonging to the group or the community in general. So aside from whatever has been mentioned, Stephanie, you've mentioned that you throw ragers, if I can borrow your word.
I forgot this is being recorded. That's not the best way to describe just a graduation party that I throw with friends and family. Yeah.
Well, they can be ragers too. You have the people you care about there.
I'm not raging. They may. Yeah.
So aside from that, aside from all of those, what else? What are the small things that you do to actually make people feel included in your lab?
Yeah, I feel like I've touched on this, and I don't know if anyone else wants to add, but one other thing that I do think is really important to grad students is networking outside of your lab, right? And so I encourage them to go to conferences. I tell them I have money, we have fellowships. Like, if there's a conference that is fitting to your research, I will find a way to get you there. And I encourage them to go together as well. Because again, I think, well, one, they have like moral support, and so they might be more confident walking up to people. But also hopefully it's kind of increasing that collaborative and exciting, like friendly environment. I think also I probably maybe blurring the lines of like friendship and advisor in like a more technical way is something that I am in between, kind of like Mirian said, where I think it's okay to be their friends. I think it's okay to talk to them about my life. I think that me being more open allows them to be more open. I think them seeing my failure and like a proposal that's not funded or something allows them to also be more open to when they fail. And so like that whole kind of vibe, I think, is cultivated in that way.
That makes sense. Yeah. So
She has her hand raised, Mircini.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to ask on that you said, because like I feel like I'm probably one of the youngest professors of our department, and I feel like students also take the initiative to see me as friend. And I wanted to ask how you keep that on hand and they don't cross lines, like they don't treat you as friend and find excuses why they didn't do the work you asked them to.
I think with PhD students, it happens less, right? For me, undergrads, masters, like there was a long time where I had a master's student and then I didn't have any master's students for a long time because I felt like they didn't have the like understanding of what research was to be that self-motivated student, and get things done while I was also being friendly to them. I do think it's hard as a younger, and this is recorded, but whatever. I think as a female, it's also a little bit harder. I think oftentimes students see you as someone who is just gonna like take care of them for whatever reason and will be more soft. And so you have to like counter that with when they need it, you have to be a little tough, and it can still be kind and considerate, but if they're not getting something done, you have to tell them like, you're not getting it done. Students not going to walk into your class with a 60 on into your office with a 60 on an exam and say, I would deserve 100 just because you're friendly to them. Right. So
believe it or not, they do.
I mean, they might ask for a second chance. I have many students who come in and are like, can I retake the exam because I'm so nice? And I'm like, no, there are rules for a reason,
Or the
This is Miami. It's different in Miami.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, can I have a chance for extra credit? And they ask me to do additional work. And then if you do it to one, then it's like everyone needs to get it. And like, I'm not going to do this extra work for each one of you.
Nah, I kind of agree with you on that.
I think for undergrads and also, in general in the courses, you have to be very clear. You have to be like, these are the rules and are for everyone. And it's not like I don't want you to give you an extra way to get more points. It's just, it's not fair for the rest of the students. I have to give the same opportunity to everyone. So no, this is not a possibility. So for me, it's completely different the way that I behave with my grad students that are in my group, that is kind of really personal relation, in the sense that we really work together, suffer together, and also celebrate together. But with the undergrads and with the students in my course, these are the rules, are clear. I put in all my slides just Professor Velay. They don't know even my first name. If my TAs talk to me in front of them, they call me Professor Velay. They don't call me Miriam. Why? Because if not, they will have a different perception. So this was also an advice that another professor, also a female professor, told me: is do not let them talk you for your first name, because the next thing is just call you dude or whatever thing. They just really feel too close. So
I
it's
agree.
completely different.
I think the easiest way to do that is to have a really, really well outlined syllabus
Yeah.
for students. And then most of the time I just say, read the syllabus. Like, I'm happy to go pull it up for you because I'm a kind person, and I'm happy to sit down and like interpret it with you if that's what you need. But at the end of the day, it's in the syllabus. And that took me a couple of years to like really make sure everything that a student would ask and challenge would be in my syllabus. But now it's all in there, and most of it's even automated in Canvas. Like if they want to turn in something late, then it automatically detects the points, all those things. So, or like whatever your learning management software is. But I also agree, my grad students, although they are my friends and family, they also call me Dr. Paul. And that's probably just because I got sick of people calling me Miss Pal from the very beginning. Yeah.
Believe it or not, this is something that I'm actually going through at this point. So we are approaching the tail end of the hour. So we have like 1 minute. So I'm just going to wrap up this discussion, thanking all our panelists for the wonderful job that you've done in highlighting some of the very important points as PIs, as professors, for students, as friends, right? So thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your insights. And for folks that have additional questions, please do email them to Prannoy, Nishant, or the group in general. And anybody who has an answer can post an answer or send an answer to it. And we also have a WhatsApp group in case you guys want to start asking questions in there. That would be wonderful. So with that said, any final comments, questions?
Yeah, thanks, Siva and Kai, for being very good moderators. Yeah. And thank you to my fellow panelists.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
thank you. Yeah, thank you all. And yeah, and every person has a different style, and you have to find your own. It's just not, I mean, whatever we do is just what we find it work, but each person will be having their own way, and it doesn't mean that one is better than the other one. It's just different.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Agree.
Yeah, agreed. Well, at the end of the day, it's all being about being inclusive.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
And receptive to others. Anyway,
All right.
it was wonderful chatting with you guys. Now we have to
Okay.
run to a defense.
Thank
Prannoy student
you.
is defending. See you.
Very nice
Have
to
a
talk
good
to you.
day.
Bye.
See you again. Bye bye.
Good day.
Bye.
Bye bye.